This month marks the 1-year anniversary for what is steadily becoming my most played online game of all time, Fall Guys. This wacky, infectious, bumbling battle royale has stumbled its way into my heart and was a contributing factor in maintaining my sanity during the pandemic. While the game hasn't enjoyed the same fervor of excitement that it did at launch, each season has improved on the formula with memorable cosmetics, satisfying systems like daily challenges and new live events, and most importantly, fun new rounds. The pool of available minigames has more than doubled in the last year, and they've only gotten more creative and balanced over time. The addition of new variants and randomized obstacles has also greatly increased the replay value and variety. I thought that in celebration of 1 full year of Falling, I'd share my personal ranking for each of the 53 available rounds in the game so far. I also figured it'd be fun to run through the list chronologically and chart the progression of the game over the past 5 seasons. My tier list will be sorted as such. At the top we have Always Fun. These are the rounds that I love to see without exception. Next is Good Vibes. These are generally very fun, but may have 1 or 2 sticking points. In the middle we have Fine, just solid rounds that I either feel indifferent about or have strong highs and lows. Then we have Boring. Pretty self-explanatory, but are often too easy, repetitive, or simple. Next to last is Bad Vibes. These rounds typically induce an audible ugh. They're often too reliant on luck or brain-dead teammates and are most susceptible to trolls. And finally, Delete! Just get them out of the game. I hate these rounds with a burning passion. Without further ado, let's look at how the first season holds up. While on the whole, I think the inaugural season of Fall Guys had an excellent lineup of rounds with tons of diversity, many of them have not held up as well when compared to their newer counterparts. They're still a lot of fun, but many have lost their luster due to repetition or lack of challenge. First off, we have the race rounds, the most common round and the heart of the game. A good race level has to have a good assortment of obstacles that are fun to traverse, and ideally enough variation to make each run a little different from the last. Dizzy Heights is a great first example because it satisfies on all accounts. The opening spinners are chaotic, but reward clean movement, though I'd like to see some variation in the spin direction so I can't just pick the same route every time. The rolling balls are exciting and unpredictable, and the final spinners and flying obstacles make for tight races. The little Yeetus at the end is also one of the most exhilarating hammers in the game, and a well-timed hit can really send you flying. Woo! One of the poster rounds for the game, DoorDash, fares a lot worse than most of the others. In theory, a recreation of wallbangers from MXC would sound really fun, but in practice, it's a randomness-dependent cluster that's over in the blink of an eye. There's potential for strategy by milling around in the middle of the pack to wait for the path to be cleared, but it ruins the spirit and fun by punishing the players blazing the trail ahead. At least the Yeetus at the finish line can be a lot of fun. Aww. I love the concept of Fruit Shoot, and it's pretty hilarious to get beamed by flying fruit. In the earlier seasons, this round was a slog as everyone slowly migrated up the edges of the conveyor, praying a stray orange wouldn't come careening out of nowhere. But with the introduction of the 2 side Yeetuses, a little practice can propel you across half the course safely. Still, a fun and frantic round. Woo! A slight upgrade from DoorDash in my opinion, the variety of door patterns helps Gatecrash stand out from the crowd. Although it's still a pretty breezy race without a lot of room for error, I occasionally have fun with it. The final slime jump can be ultra punishing, however. Hit Parade is pretty solid, but a little bit less exciting than Dizzy Heights. The opening beams are actually slower than just taking the slime slide below, and most of the obstacles don't pose much of a threat either. As long as you don't get greedy, it's pretty easy to consistently place high in a race here. The final incline is the only part that I really enjoy and keeps this round from being just fine. The alternating speeds of the bumpers can really make or break a run, and adds the right amount of spice to create nail-biting photo finishes. Woo! A fan least favorite, Seesaw is definitely worthy of the hate. At best, it's a pretty brainless jaunt to the finish line, but at worst, it's a brutal waiting game as dozens of players hurl themselves fruitlessly onto the paddles, dragging everyone else with them. There's not even a lot of room for cooperation, it often just boils down to everyone waiting in line patiently for their turn to run across. And don't even get me started on those front-to-back paddles they experimented with. Let's hope to God they never reintroduce those for trolls to abuse again. Aww. Another pretty iconic round, Slime Climb was one of, if not the hardest rounds in the first season. With unrelenting obstacles, tons of beans bumping into you, and a rapidly rising pink pool of death, this round routinely eliminated over 2/3 of the players. Not to mention the myriad ways the course encourages bad manners and trolls. From standing on the beam to block players, to having sumo pushing matches on the slime, to pushing the button to send cannonballs down on your competitors, to just waiting at the finish line and waving to the camera while wasting everyone's time. This course offers ample challenge for veterans, but is outweighed by a lot of BS. My favorite race from Season 1 still holds up a year later. The Whirligig is a deceptively simple round that's fun to pick up, but even more fun to master. With a plethora of opportunities for shortcuts and speedy bounces, I still find little ways to optimize my runs. From diving over the wall to squeezing under the spinner, the Whirligig has aged incredibly well. The spinning plates variant really transforms the final stretch and is a great change of pace as well. Probably a controversial pick, but I generally have a good time with Tiptoe. The round suffers from the same issues as DoorDash because it tends to reward cowardice. If you get stuck in a group where no one's willing to take a step forward, this round really blows, but if you throw caution to the wind and just throw yourself onto the mercy of the falling plates, then Tiptoe can be hilarious and exhilarating. It's also not that difficult to find the final stretch if you watch the shaking plates carefully and quickly rule out where the dead ends can be found. Even if I make too many rash decisions and doom myself, I still have a blast. Woo! Block Party is another round that sounds more fun in concept than execution. Reminiscent of Hole in the Wall, it can be exciting to all squeeze through a narrow hole just in time, but in practice this round poses little challenge. The round can feel overly long, and only the final stretch can really catch me off guard. I'd honestly prefer a more intense but shorter round with more randomness in the wall patterns, but until then, this course is just so-so. Jump Club is just jumping over a spinning beam. That's it. The variants don't really improve the pace of the game. The triple beam variant is the closest this round gets to challenging, but I'd pretty much rather see anything else.
Aww.
Everything except rollout. I don't like rollout. This round is pretty boring, but you can get some sadistic satisfaction out of pushing another being to their doom. Unfortunately, being on the receiving end of the Sparta kick is one of the most infuriating feelings in the game to date.
Donkey, I'm warning you.
The round either takes an eternity to end, or it encourages a bunch of aggressive grabbing matches, neither of which are very fun.
Aww.
And here's where I'll first mention that I hate the grabbing mechanic in Fall Guys. While tail tag is a good concept that should reward skilled movement and platforming, the proximity and reach of other players fluctuates based on lag. Sometimes players can inexplicably nab you from a mile away or never seem to be in reach. The arena is just not very fun to traverse, and you might as well not even participate until the round timer is nearly over. Just an overall flawed round.
Aww.
But we haven't even seen the worst of it because Perfect Match is abysmal. So far, it's the only round in the whole game classified as a logic round, and it's no wonder they haven't even tried to make anything similar. Just waiting around and looking for the fruit patterns on the floor. Riveting stuff. The worst thing is you're usually just better off going with the crowd since almost no one ever gets eliminated in this round. There are so many ways this round could be fixed to be more interesting. Make the rounds faster so players need to reach the safe platforms quicker, give each player their own set of platforms so they can't cheat off other players, or just make it a hexagon heat style game where everyone's got to group up on a single platform. Anything but this boring slog. This flying fruit variant is at least a step in the right direction. But the Perfect Deathmatch version, as it's been coined by the community, has the opposite problem because it's too intense and destructive. Not only are you trying to memorize tiles, you're also jumping over a pretty fast and intimidating beam. One misstep and you're dead, and you still have to survive the entire 3 rounds. Maybe if they implemented a percentage of survivors like Jump Club, this would be more salvageable. Now, I haven't flip-flopped on a round as much as I have towards Egg Scramble, besides the next one. At one time, this was one of my most hated rounds, but these days I actually get pretty excited for it. I used to hate it because it's a frenetic team game with huge swings in score, and teams can easily gang up and punish the weakest team, but I found that people have gotten a lot better at the game, and rounds tend to be a lot closer than they used to be. There's also a lot of different positions and ways for players to help their team, from defending the base, to playing aggressive, to scoring from the midfield. It's one of a few team games that I feel like I can actively contribute to the success of my team by filling in different roles where my teammates may struggle, and as long as I'm not getting steamrolled, I have a good time, but good luck trying to get a team game these days. The devs must have listened to the backlash because most of these team games are nearly impossible to get anymore, which should be good news for most players and bad news for people trying to get footage of all 53 rounds in 2021.
Woo!
Fall Ball is the round that's benefited the most from round variants in my eyes. The original Fall Ball was either a war of attrition with players swarming the ball like a pee-wee soccer match, or else it was completely dominated by whichever team scored more headers when the balls dropped in the center. one skilled player can completely trample the other team with very little room to make a comeback. These days, the physics in the balls feel lighter and easier to change direction with a dive, but the true king is the inclusion of the center spinner variant and, to a lesser extent, the goal pendulums and side hammers. These obstacles make scoring more difficult for both teams, in turn leveling the playing field and actually requiring coordination and good timing. Similar to Egg Scramble, I found that I can assume different roles each time I play to help my team, and it's just so satisfying to hit a well-timed pass into the goal.
Woo!
The worst ball rolling round goes to Hoarders, the ugly offspring of Egg Scramble and Fall Ball. The same problems of ganging up on the weakest team are in full display here, but the ball physics and smaller number of balls in play makes it more frustrating to make a comeback. A good player can totally box you out, and everyone tends to get tunnel vision and neglect defending the nest. The added bumpers and hammers help a tiny bit, but are way less impactful than the additions to Fall Ball.
Ooh.
Now here's a team game I can get behind. Hoopsie Daisy is as fun to play as it is to say. Hoopsie Daisy! Even if my team totally sucks, I still get a kick out of jumping through hoops. What can I say? I'm a bean of simple pleasures. Although I'm not much of a, fan of the fan variant, this round offers a lot of different strategies and rewards good platforming and awareness. Hoopsie Daisy!
Woo, 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 woo!
I really wanted to like Jinxed, but it just never comes together in a satisfying way. It's still mentally scarred from the original glitch where players could hang indefinitely and never get caught. The concept of a vampire round as players quickly infect each other is really cool, but just never seem to have any fun running away or chasing the other players. The grabbing latency is still a big issue, and your contributions just give the opposition more opportunities to claim victory. No matter what you do, this round always feels like a coin toss, and that's no fun. A team game that actually facilitates teamwork? How novel! Rock and Roll is an exhilarating round that always feels like it comes down to the wire. While it's still possible to get saddled with teammates who can't seem to push the ball around the pegs or charge ahead to grief the other teams while leaving you behind to slowly inch the ball further, I find this game to be pretty balanced. It does seem like the center team has a slight advantage, however, as it's harder to wedge their ball into one of the corners, but thankfully just jumping under one of the balls is usually enough to bypass any would-be blockers. The rounds are quick enough to not often enter stalemates either.
Woo!
The team variant of Tail Tag is a slight upgrade to the free-for-all version since the arena is a bit more engaging and there are more interesting interactions. You can help pincer your opponents or hold them in place to benefit your teammates, as well as hide out or sneak up on people. You're generally less incentivized to just sit around, but you're still at the mercy of your team whether you're eliminated or not.
Aww.
The crown jewel of Fall Guys is the iconic Fall Mountain. One last deadly obstacle course lies between you and victory, and the first to reach the peak takes the prize. Too bad this round is woefully boring. Of all the race rounds in the whole game, this is one of the most lackluster, which is a real shame considering it's supposed to be this tense final test of skill. It's shockingly short, and the obstacles are so predictable that players have basically known the optimal path since the first week, and it hasn't evolved much since. The added annoyance is that the floating crown is notoriously glitchy, leading to all sorts of shenanigans, from grabs not being registered, ties going to players that clearly seem behind you, to the hilariously gut-wrenching climbing glitch. This course is a mess, and in dire need of a facelift.
Aww.
The true pinnacle of Fall Guys finales is, of course, Hexagon. Similar to Minecraft's Spleef, players run over pieces of the floor, causing them to fall, and the last one standing above the slime wins. It's a simple concept, but offers tons of options for strategy and counterplay. Do you try to play slow and safe, and time your jumps to wait out your opponents below, or do you play aggressively and intentionally fall to the lower levels to carve out death traps for everyone above? You can tailor your approach to counter the other players, and still it can often be anyone's game. And because the pace is entirely player-driven, each round feels completely distinct and exciting. The newest low-gravity variant takes a little bit of the fun out of it because it typically slows everything down and is much more reliant on luck to land on the last available tile since it's much harder to die. It's by far my favorite round in the whole shebang.
Woo, 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 woo!
Meanwhile, Royal Fumble is an atrocity and an abomination of a finale. Take everything that's annoying about Tail Tag, plop it in a boring arena with an arbitrarily long timer, and you've got a round I'd rather just quit out than play. Instead of rewarding the player who was able to avoid the competition the longest through skilled platforming and dodging, it just devolves into a pile of tag bags as everyone falls over each other in the last 10 seconds. It just feels bad to win, and it's not what you want from a finale. Thankfully, it only crops up when there are 6 or less finalists, but I can say they really fumbled it. Jump Showdown! It's just Jump Club, but longer. Maybe if the spinner actually went a little faster, it wouldn't be so mind-numbing. The only enjoyment I get is by griefing the other players or trying to take them with me.
Aww.
While the second season offered the fewest number of brand new rounds, it did add new variants to many of the existing rounds, which helped to keep things interesting. An exciting step up for the race rounds in terms of difficulty, Night Fever offers some downright diabolical obstacles, including the spinning axes, rotating pegs, and the hard-hitting thick bonkuses. Real term. This round has seen a lot of interesting variants over time and is still quite fun to navigate. The theming is a bit lackluster, however, and sometimes the obstacles can be more irritating than fun.
Woo!
I have mixed feelings towards Wall Guys. It's a pseudo-cooperative race with opportunities to help everyone or hinder everyone simultaneously. The ledge grabbing can be a bit finicky, and trying to climb with everyone bouncing off each other for position can be rage-inducing. It at least requires some planning and rewards good platforming. I always breathe a huge sigh of satisfaction when I complete this grueling round. Hoopsie Legend is a little less fun to say and equally less fun to play than Hoopsie Daisy, but not by too much. This is the sweaty tryhards Hoopsie Daisy, a free-for-all deathmatch of circular supremacy that's up to you to claim victory. The gold ring spawns are even more important here, and the arena is a bit troublesome to navigate. It's definitely a high-stakes round, and I do enjoy it, but I prefer the more laid-back atmosphere of Daisy.
Woo!
If you thought Egg Scramble was a sacky round, you ain't seen the blowouts on Egg Siege. Initially, I really liked the design of the Siege Arena, but I quickly grew annoyed by how big and sprawling it is compared to Scramble. It's so much slower to transport your eggs up and around these ramps, and you're much more susceptible to getting grabbed and losing your grip. The worst part is how easily only a few players can lock down a defense and protect their lead. The eggs are so annoying to get out of these enormous holes that rounds are often decided in the first 30 seconds. Thankfully, I found you can lob eggs up onto the platform with some coordination from your team to speed up the process, but this round is excruciating. The variant obstacles just make the round even more annoying. I'm a big fan of Big Fans. It's one of my favorite races, and it's just so fun to run through. Not too easy, not too hard, and the wind gusts add some nice complexity to rounds, and I just really don't have anything bad to say about it.
Woo, 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 woo!
The Frosty third season really upped the game for thematically pleasing rounds. There was plenty of snow and ice and festive fun to be had, but perhaps appropriately a real polarizing set of courses. A unique take on the race round, Freezy Peak starts with players spread out to different obstacles and then converge in the middle to climb the spiraling path of boxing gloves, hoping to pummel you into the abyss. The opening obstacles don't quite feel balanced. I'd prefer the fans to the conveyor belt, and waiting for the pattern of boxing gloves is a real drag, especially if one barely nicks you and you have to start all over again. Thankfully, the alternating conveyor belts and large fan are a fun reward for reaching the top. Still my favorite normal round, Ski Fall mixes the high stakes of Hoopsie Legends with a more enjoyable mechanic of slipping down an icy slide. Feels like playing human skee-ball, hence the pun. Diving through the rotating holes is a hoot, and hitting the final ramp into the goal is always satisfying. No round puts a smile on my face like Ski Fall.
Woo, 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 woo!
Tundra Run is a more consistently good race than Freezy Peak. There's not much variety, but what's there is enjoyable. I don't even bother with the middle routes for most of this course, which is a shame since they offer such a negligible advantage for how risky they are. And until you realize you just need to walk up the far left or right, the final fan section feels impossible. A whimsical addition that I don't mind playing.
Woo!
Season 3 introduced us to the Penguin, a walking tail tag essentially. Their erratic movement and small size makes them easy to lose track of and catch. With only 3 available and everyone fighting over them, Penguin Pursuit is just a mess. While it can be fun to make a clean getaway and feels fairer than Jinxed, it can still feel like a 3-way toss-up. Did I mention I don't like the grabbing mechanics in this game? While I have more positive rounds than negative, I have to say that Snowy Scrap just encourages bad manners to win. Conceptually, this round is adorable as you all work together to roll the biggest snowball first. It quickly devolved into shoving matches and pinning your opponent down, grinding the pace to a halt. While the chaos and strategy of messing with your opponents is interesting, this round could perhaps have benefited from a longer stretch separated from your opponents like Rock and Roll does. The first new finale added to the game, Roll Off, is just Rollout, but longer. But because of the high stakes and necessity to eliminate every opponent, I like this just slightly better than Rollout. The variation of the patterns each time is hardly noticeable, and the rounds can last so long that it becomes incredibly monotonous after a while. Thin Ice, on the other hand, is a welcome addition to the finale roster as a new variant to the already incredible Hexagon. This time incorporating slippery platforms, hexagons that take longer to disappear, and the smaller stage where almost everyone lasts until the very end. This leads to Thin Ice matches feeling very cramped and even more intense than Hexagon's speedier pace. The round lends itself more to mind games and outplanning your opponents to give yourself more room to survive since it's harder to cut off your opponents quickly. An excellent alternative, but not quite as enjoyable as the original. Lastly, we got Snowball Survival, a pretty dull round without a lot going on. You aren't really in any danger of falling unless other players are aggressively trying to break the ice around you, and even then it's pretty easy to stand still and pay attention to the paths of the snowball. I really kicked myself when I somehow managed to get eliminated on this boring level. After the highs and lows of Season 3, Season 4 brought out the big guns and really found its stride with a consistently good batch of rounds. The sci-fi aesthetic was also even more prevalent and added to the memorability of the new stages. But first, we got a bit of a stinker. While it was interesting to see a return to the classic style of Fall Guys rounds, Roll On feels late to the party and doesn't add much fresh or exciting. Bland presentation and only 2 different ring patterns makes this course feel old quick. The first race to incorporate multiple laps, Short Circuit offers a pretty good challenge and variety of obstacles. Because you have to complete the whole thing twice, this round gets old twice as fast, but I still enjoy it. Although having to watch the slow introductory cutscene before the round starts is so irritating. The real standout stage from Season 4 is Skyline Stumble, an endurance race that tests all kinds of platforming skills. Despite its length, I adore this round's presentation and sheer number of obstacle types. The pinball flippers at the end are a nice touch and an impressive way to finish the course. It's almost remarkable how much of a misfire this round is. Big Shots is such a simple concept. Players stand on a seesaw and avoid flying objects, but they forgot that people actually need to fall off. The objects fly in such predictable paths that you can essentially survive by putting the controller down. Even if you manage to get hit, it often doesn't do more than knock you down briefly. Players aren't incentivized to walk back and forth, so the seesaw might as well be a static board. This round has so much potential to be more challenging, but even the 5-cannon variant hardly solves the problem. Almost a combination of a race and a survival round, Hoverboard Heroes has a lot going for it. The hoverboard theme is really memorable, and moving through the different obstacles means it's much more interactive than Big Shots. I particularly like the low gravity section, and the slower pace of the hoverboard gives the stage a relaxing atmosphere while still being a good challenge. No way, I got nothing nice to say about basketball. Eliminate the coordination and teamwork of fall ball, just make it a damn free-for-all with balls bouncing all over the place. We have the stupid grabbing mechanics at their absolute worst as people are yanking each other around and nobody even understands which hoops they're supposed to score into. There's so many opportunities for people to grab you and make you drop your ball that it's just annoying to do anything. Good luck trying to play defense, good luck trying to make any shots. This round is everything I hate about team games and the grabbing mechanics rolled into one. Power Trip is a decently well executed take on the concept of controlling more area than the other team. If you're holding the battery, you can light up the floor with your color, but there are less batteries than there are players, so some will have to go out and steal the batteries from the other team. This adds more layers of complexity and interactivity than just everyone walking around following each other, but it's still bogged down by the dumb grabbing mechanics, and it's hard to make a clean getaway if you manage to steal a battery. There are some strategies you can use to help your team, but it ends up being just okay, not great. I find the Slime Scraper to be a straight upgrade to the old Slime Climb. Just as challenging, if not slightly more so, with the more aggressive obstacles and conveyor belts, but more fun overall. There are way less bottlenecks where players can just wait around and mess with each other. This is a pure test of skill, and it sure is an exciting one. My only problem with it is that the opening rush before getting ahead of the pack can screw you up if you make a few mistakes. It's much more common to get knocked down to a lower level and have to redo obstacles in Slime Climb as well, but I think it's a much needed improvement. Another first, Button Bashers, is the first one-on-one competition round. You and a rival are thrown into a pit and tasked with hitting more glowing buttons than the other. This round is super tense and personal and leads to all sorts of mind games and narrow victories. I love it. I'm not always in the mood for the level of intensity it takes to survive, but holding on to a lead and denying my opponent points is such a power play. And that brings us to today. Season 5's Untamed Jungle has produced some of the most gorgeous rounds in the game so far. It helps that they're some of the best as well. Just a jolly race that delivers a really satisfying sense of speed. The addition of a mid-air dive every bounce gives Lily Leapers some of the best feeling controls in the game. Chaining jumps feels wonderful, and without much fear of getting set back, you can really push yourself to take risks and zip through the course in no time flat. This will be another course that I'll love to get faster at. Treetop Tumble is a slight step down from Lily Leapers by virtue of being a bit too difficult for its own good. What's here I really like, and the options to take the higher or lower route are appreciated, but most of the riskier shortcuts just don't feel worth taking. Unlike the Whirligig, I feel more severely punished for taking the harder routes, so I just default to the safe and familiar, which feels like a missed opportunity. It's also a visually overwhelming stage with tons of moving obstacles and frogs and rhinos in your face constantly, and nothing feels worse than landing on the slime and pathetically slipping off into the void right in front of the finish line. Here's a take on snowball survival that actually works as intended. Stomping Ground is a blast, and dodging the rampaging rhinos is exhilarating. It takes a good amount of concentration without being overwhelming or too chaotic. The addition of floating drums outside the arena is a genius touch, and adds a random chance to save yourself if you make a mistake. Unfortunately, the rhinos can still nudge you under this rope here, which is a real drag of a way to go. Still, by far my favorite survival round. Bubble Trouble plays like a more varied and interesting version of Hoopsie Legends. The arena is split up into 5 distinct zones, and you're tasked with popping 15 bubbles instead of fighting over rings. I love the different areas and how many more collectibles there are at one time. You can really pull away with the lead if you can anticipate where the next batch of bubbles will spawn, and different players may excel in different zones. Really colorful and fun to explore stage as well. The Penguins return in Penguin Pool Party, but this time it's a free-for-all. Thankfully, instead of all fighting over 3 Penguins, there's a much more generous amount to reduce the frustration of grabbing wars. The Penguins also stick around once players qualify, which makes the round actually speed up rather than slow down. The arena is pretty weird aesthetically, but I actually don't hate it. Overall, they avoided all my complaints and made an actually good grabbing round. And last but not least, we have the newest finale, Lost Temple. This maze-like take on Fall Mountain solves my major complaint that Fall Mountain is too easy and you can always take the same route if you never get hit. I've yet to find a pattern for Lost Temple, and that makes for an even more exciting version of DoorDash as well. There are still opportunities where you can get screwed for making one wrong move, and grabbing the crown can still fail to register, but I'll take Temple over Mountain any day. That's right, I think all of Season 5's rounds are good or better. Hopefully this is a sign of even greater things to come. So, here's the full tier list in order. There's definitely quite a bit more good than bad in my opinion. If you've been sleeping on Fall Guys after the Zeitgeist, I encourage you to jump in again because the game has so much to offer. Here's to another year of Fall Guys, and if I see you at the starting line, then may the best bean win.